Samsaradava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Ganaganatvam Samsaradava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karunya Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramarjanado Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramarjanado Joktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Chaturvedha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satvana Triptam Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvedha Kritvaiva trupti bhajato shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shradikama Vabayara Para Madhurya Leela Guna Rupa Namna Shradikama Vabayara Para Madhurya Leela Pratikshana Swa Dhanalolupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Ne Kunjayuno Ratikeli Siddhai Jajali Vir Joktir Apekshaniya Ne Kunjayuno Ratikeli Siddhai Jajali Vir Joktir Apekshaniya Tatrati Daksha Pativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam सच्चाधैतेन समस्तशास्त्रे प्रोक्तास्तथाव गतैव सदवे किन्तु प्रभोज प्रिया एव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणोरविन्दम् प्रिया एव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्री यस्य प्रसाद भगवत्प्रसाद यस्य प्रसाद नगति कुतपि यस्य प्रसाद यस्य प्रसाद नगति कुतपि जायं स्तुवं तस्य यस्य त्रिसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणोरविन्दम् Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Samenite Namine Namah Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatari Shatarine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. Hare Hare Nama, Krishna Jadavaye Nama, Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama, Gopal Govindaram Shrimadhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Pramananda Haribo. Jai Vishnu Paraparamsa Prabhupada Acharya, Astuttara Saraswati Maharaj Divine Grace, Abhacharvina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Iskan Pratishta Viviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Siramani Patita Pavan Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Vargapati Tudhar ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhakta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ji ki jai. Anant Koti Vaishnavrendi ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासारी गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय प्रणाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिनंदन श्रीमन गौरंग चैत्र महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावृंद अवतार की जय। गोलोकीय प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। Priyapadanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप कुपना राधा कुंसम कुन गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। तेलोश विशेष राधा नील माधव की जय। श्री श्री मैपूर्ण नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। परिवार सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कन श्रृंगरे भगवान की जय। जगंगा माय जमुना माय की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे हरि बोल। All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru Shri Gauranga Hari Bol. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Pralada Ragada Hayine Hiranyakasipu Vakshan Silatankana Kalaye ito nisingo parato nisingo jato jato jami tato nisingo jato jato jami tato nisingo Bair nisingo Rudaye nisingo Bair nisingo Rudaye nisingo Narasinga Madhime Sharanam Prapade Tavakara Kamala Vare Naka Adavutta Shinga Dalita Hiranyakasipu Tanabingam Kesavadikam Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Pavakara Kamala Vare Naka Adamutta Shinga Dalita Hiranyakasipu Tanabhinga Kesavadita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jayo Nishingade Jayo Nishingade Nishingade Jayo Nishingade Jayo Nishingade Jayo Nishingade Nishingade Jayo Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Pralanava Jaya Pralanara 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 Jaya Pralanara Jai Shri Shri Bhakti Pada Sarvignaashana Kanishingari Bhagavan ki Jai Bhakta Shristha Prahlad Maharaj ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Premanande Hari Hari Bo Shri Vrindaya Tulasi Devai Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Vipade Devi Satavatai Namo Vrindaya Tulasi Devai Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Vrindaya Tulasi Devai प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति पारे देवी सतवताय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो
राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो हे अभिलाषी
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
जे तो मारा शरण लो तारा वंच पूरा न हो
तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वंच पूर्ण
कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी
कृपा करे करतारे वृंदावनवासी
मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास
मोराए बेला विलास कुंज देवा
नयने हरिबो सदा जुगल रूपरासी
रेबो सदा जुगल रूपरासी
ए निवेदाना धारो साखीर अनुगाता कोरो
सकीरायनो गताकरो
सेवा अधिकारा दिए कोरो निज दासी कृष्ण दासे कोई जीना मोरा होए
Krishna Krishna dase koi eyena mora
श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada yena basi
श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada yena basi
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
Jani kani sapapani Brahma hatari kani sa Tani tani prana santi Padachina pade pade
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
Tani kani sapapani Brahma hatari kani sa Tani tani prana santi Padachina pade pade
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
Tani kani sapapani brahmatari kani sa Tani tani prana santi Padachina pade pade
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
जया तुलसी महारानी जया तुलसी महारानी जया तुलसी महारानी जया तुलसी महारानी
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani
वृंदा देवी जया वृंदा देवी जया वृंदा देवी
Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय
Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavaktai Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satavatai Prindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satavatai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrindadevi Ki Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan. Thus within my vision, I would always behold a beautiful pastime to Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavya damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. Please very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always sing in love Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrindadevi Ki. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai. Chito Satipadam Punam Sadhanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Krishna Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai. Om Havadanyaya Supreme. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the light of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus we have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There is not even hard and fast rule for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer our respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or rather I'm following this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on end of their recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation and considering a moment to be like 12 years or more, tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I don't know one but Krishna as my Lord. I'm sure remain so. Even the sun does not wipe by his embrace, or makes me broken hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, but is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri 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 Kitana Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blasphemy. God is dedicated life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. Consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. Disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. Blaspheme the Vedic literatures or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. Consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious activities offered in Vedas as spiritual activities, karma kanda. 9. Instruct the fearless person by the glories of the holy name. And 10. Do not have complete faith in chanting the holy names, and to maintain material attachments, even if understanding common instruction on this matter. It is also an offense to be innocent about chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna. Now let us offer our respectful obeisance to the Vaishnavas, the worship of the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditions of
Shrimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadhyasya Yato Nivayaditaratascha Teswa Vigyaswara.
Janmadhyasya Yatam Vayaditaratascha Teswa Vigyaswara.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Atsurayaha.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Atsurayaha.
Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargomesha.
Tejo Varimridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargomesha.
Tamnasvina Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Namnasvena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality Godhead.
O all-pervading personality
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto us. the heart of Brahmaji,
It is the only first imparted Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji,
the original living
the
being.
original living
By
being.
him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are pleasant to live.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of water seen to fire, land seen on
Only
water.
because of him do the material universes
Only because of him do the material universe
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature
appear factual, although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they are
I therefore
unreal.
meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental
which is
abode,
forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of
I
material world.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma
truth.
projita, kaitravota,
Dharma prajita kaitavutta
paramo nirmatsanam satam,
paramo nirmasaranam
vedyam
satam
vastu vamatra vastu,
vedyam vastavamastru vastu
shivadam tapatrayon mulanam,
shivadam taputrayam
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni
Kim
Krite,
Vapur
Kimva
Ishvara,
Paririshwaraha
Sadyo Hridi Avurudyate
Sadyo Rudya Parudya Titra
Kriti Bihi Susursabistakshanat,
Kritivihi Shushu Shubhistakyanat,
completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in the
The
heart.
highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth is the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare
Such
of
truth
all.
uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva is
is
maturity.
sufficient in itself for God realization.
Is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other
What
scripture?
is the need of the other
As
scripture?
soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of knowledge,
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpaturo galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpatalam,
sukumakad amrita dvabhya samyutam,
sukamakadam Rav Sangitam,
pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Vivata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam,
muhur ahoraska bhavibhavakaha.
Mura Hora Sikav Vivabuka.
Expert and thoughtful men relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad
the
Bhagavatam.
mature fruit of the desire to Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit of the desire to Vedic
It
literature.
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadev Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this food has become even more
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for
tasteful.
all,
Although its nectarian juice was already reachable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shambhatam Swakuta Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hiryantakstohi Padrani,
Vidyantastohi Abhadra,
Vidunati Suhit Satam.
Vidunati
To hear
Suritsata.
about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literature,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly through the
is
Bhagavad Gita,
itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's
acts
heart,
as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best
and
wisher,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the body with constantly engaged in hearing of him.
Nastapresu Bhadresu
Nasta Praishwa Bhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke
Bhagavati Naistaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Naisti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
And he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the
he
devotee.
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
He becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo Bhava
Tadarajastamo Bhava
Kamaloba Dayasche
Kamalobhadaya
Cheta Itaranavidam
Yetaitaranavina
Stipam Sattve Prasidati.
Sitam Sabde Pasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By developing of devotional
one
service,
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion of ignorance.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasannamanaso
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti
Bhagavad
Yogata
Tattva Vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva
Mukta
Vijnana
Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
The candidate remains steady in his position of pure
becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by
and
devotional
understands the
service,
science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
Jidyate Hridaya Grantis,
chidyante sarva samsaya,
Jidyante
siyante
Sarvasamshaya,
chasya karmani,
Jyante Chasakarmani,
evatmanishvari.
Drusta
Thus,
Evatmaneshvari.
bhakti yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the hard note of material
and
affection
enables one to come at once to the stage of samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of Assumption Samagrama,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of God.
the understanding of the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
See Guru Vastika prayers. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy,
Is receiving the benediction from the ocean of mercy,
just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it.
just as cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it.
So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world
So the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world
by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
by extinguishing the blazing fire of material
I
existence.
offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master,
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
who is an
master,
ocean of auspicious qualities,
who is an ocean of species qualities,
chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy,
chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy,
singing and playing musical instruments.
singing and playing musical
The
instruments.
spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu,
Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
Sometimes his hair stands on end.
Sometimes his bodily hair stand on end.
He feels quivering in his body,
If he's quivering in his body,
and tears flow from his eyes like waves.
and tears flow from his eyes like
I
waves.
offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a
The
spiritual
spiritual
master.
master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri, Shri Radha, and Krishna.
The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and
He
Krishna.
also engages his disciples in such worship.
He also engages his disciples in such
They
worship.
dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
Yet which they did in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
clean their temple,
clean the temple,
and perform other similar worship of the
and
Lord.
perform other similar worship of the
I
Lord.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food,
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
Analyzed as that one which is licked, chewed, drunk, and
When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada,
when the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada,
he is satisfied.
he is
I
satisfied.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastime Shri Radha
And their qualities, names, and forms.
and about their qualities, names, and
The
forms.
spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every
I
moment.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting gopis,
The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis,
who at different times make different tasteful arrangements
who at different times make different tasteful arrangements
for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs.
for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs
Within the groves of Vrindavana,
within the groves of
I offer
Vrindavan.
my respectful obeisance I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord,
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord
because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
because he is the most confidential servant of the Lord.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures
This is acknowledged in all revealed
and
scriptures
followed by all authorities.
and followed by all authorities.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master,
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
who is a
master,
bona fide representative of Shri Hari Krishna.
who is the bona fide representative of Sri Hari Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
Without the grace of the spiritual master,
Without the grace of the spiritual master,
one cannot make any advancement.
one cannot make any advancement.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
Therefore, I shall always remember and praise the spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Verse 21. Yad angri abhidhyana samadhi dotaya dhyana pasyanti hitatvam atmana
Diyam apati lokapati
vadanti chaitat kavayo yata rucham same mukundo bhagavan prasiddhatam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. It is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who gives liberation by thinking of his lotus feet at every second, following in the footsteps of authorities. The devotee in trance can see the absolute truth. The learned mental speculators, however, think of him according to their whims. May the Lord be pleased with me. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The mystic yogis, after a strenuous effort to control the senses, may be situated in a trance of yoga just to have a vision of the supersoul within everyone. But the pure devotee, simply by remembering the Lord's lotus feet at every second, at once becomes established in real trance, because by such realization his mind and intelligence are completely cleansed of the diseases of material enjoyment. The pure devotee thinks himself fallen into the ocean of birth and death, and incessantly prays to the Lord to lift him up. He only aspires to become a speck of transcendental dust at the lotus feet of the Lord. The pure devotee, by grace of the Lord, absolutely loses all attraction for material enjoyment, and to keep free from contamination, he always thinks of the lotus feet of the Lord. King Kalushakara, a great devotee of the Lord, prayed, Krishna tvadiya padapankaja panjaranantam adyaiva me visatu manasaraja hamsa prana prayana samaye kalpavata pitai Kata varodana vido samaranam kutaste. My Lord Krishna, I pray that the swan of my mind may immediately sink down to the stems of the lotus feet of your Lordship and be locked in their network. Otherwise, at the time of my final breath, when my throat is choked up with cough, how will it be possible to think of you? There is an intimate relationship between the swan and the lotus stem, so the comparison is very appropriate. Without becoming a swan or paramahansa, one cannot enter into the network of the lotus feet of the Lord. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, the mental speculators, even by dint of learned scholarship, cannot even dream of the absolute truth by speculating over it for eternity. The Lord reserves the right of not being exposed to such mental speculators, and because they cannot enter into the network stem of the lotus feet of the Lord, all mental speculators differ in conclusions. And at the end, they make a useless compromise by saying as many conclusions as many ways. That is yatamat tatapat in Bengali. According to one's own inclination, yata rucham. But the Lord is not like a shopkeeper trying to please all sorts of customers in the mental speculator exchange. The Lord is what he is, the absolute personality of Godhead, and he demands absolute surrender unto him only. The pure devotee, however, by following the ways of previous acharyas or authorities, can see the Supreme Lord through the transparent medium of a bona fide spiritual master, anupashyanti. The pure devotee never tries to see the Lord by mental speculation, but by following in the footsteps of the acharyas, mahajana yenagata sapanta. Therefore, there is no difference of conclusions amongst the Vaishnava acharyas regarding the Lord and the devotees. Lord Chaitanya asserts that the living entity, Jiva, is eternally the servitor of the Lord, and that he is simultaneously one with and different from the Lord. This tattva of Lord Chaitanya's is shared by all four sampradayas of the Vaishnava school, all accepting eternal servitude to the Lord even after salvation. And there is no authorized Vaishnava acharya who may think of the Lord and himself as one. The humbleness of the pure devotee, who is 100% engaged in his service, meaning Krishna's service, puts the devotee of the Lord in a trance by which to realize everything. Because to the sincere devotee of the Lord reveals himself, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 10.10. The Lord, being the Lord of intelligence in everyone, even in the non-devotee, favors his devotee with proper intelligence so that automatically the pure devotee is enlightened with the factual truth about the Lord and his different energies. The Lord is revealed not by one's speculative power or by one's verbal jugglery over the absolute truth. Rather, he reveals himself to a devotee when he is fully satisfied by the devotee's service attitude. Sukadeva Goswami is not a mental speculator or compromiser of the theory of as many ways as many conclusions. Rather, he prays to the Lord only, invoking his transcendental pleasure. That is the way of knowing the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who gives liberation by thinking of his lotus feet at every second, following in the footsteps of authorities. The devotee entranced can see the absolute truth. The learned mental speculators, however, think of him according to their whims. May the Lord be pleased with me. Hare Krishna. So this is a very eloquent purport and is definitely significant today because there are different controversies raging between devotees and leaders of the movement concerning equality and concerning women becoming Diksha gurus and concerning the re-editing of Prabhupada's books. It goes on. There's a long list of debatable subjects that are not really debatable. But when one speculates, everything becomes debatable. And that's what's happening today. So, the main point made in this purport, which are really amazing, number one, that is, that all the efforts by the karma yogis, the jnana yogis, and the Astanga yogis or mystic yogis become zero unless they take up devotional service. All the hard effort that they make, either to reach the heavenly planets for enhanced sense gratification or to merge into the Brahman after a long process of neti, eliminating everything that they think is not true, and or to develop amazing transcendental, yoga cities by very, very harsh austerities are actually a waste of time, unless one comes to the conclusion that Vasudeva Saramiti, Krishna, you are everything for me, and therefore I completely surrender unto you and dedicate all my physical activity and mental activity and intelligence to serving you. If one does not come to that conclusion, every other thing they have done for spiritual advancement is a waste of time. And they never really attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Even one material desire is enough to keep a person in the material world. So, that's why Prabhupada says here that, but the pure devotee, simply by remembering the Lord's lotus feet at every second, at once becomes established in real trance. So, he's comparing the trance of the mystic yogi after strenuous effort to control the senses. And he may be situated in a trance of yoga. And in that trance of yoga, he may have a vision of the supersoul within everyone's heart. But the pure devotee, simply, and that's the main word, simply, by remembering the Lord's lotus feet at every second, at once becomes established in real trance. Because by such realization, his mind and intelligence are completely cleansed of the diseases of material enjoyment. That's the key point. This mindset of desiring the sick disease of material enjoyment, even in advanced stages of mystic yoga, jnana yoga, or karma yoga, ruins one's ability to actually attain the goal of full liberation, going back to Godhead. So, Prabhupada says, the pure devotee thinks himself fallen into the ocean of birth and death, and incessantly, that means unending, prays to the Lord to lift him up. One time Prabhupada said that the only prayer of the devotee is, please Krishna, don't let me fall into Maya. What is Maya? It's a desire for sense enjoyment, independent of the Lord. So this enjoying tendency, well, it's a natural thing because the nature of the soul is Anandamaya Vyasat, to be full of transcendental bliss. But there's a difference between transcendental bliss and sense gratification. This is what is not understood. Most people think that sense gratification is bliss. That's why they say ignorance is bliss. But actually, sense gratification keeps one entangled continually in the throes of birth, death, old age, and disease. So then what is the difference between sense gratification and Anandamaya Vyasat, experiencing transcendental bliss? The difference is that one tries to have sense gratification independent of Krishna. Therefore, one has to have Krishna's help to forget him so that they can engage in sense gratification. Like, for example, if someone was having sex, obviously with someone else, and you come up to him and say, Prabhu, here's the Bhagavad Gita, let's go have a class, what would they say? They would say, get the heck out of here. Wait, are you crazy or what? Leave me alone. How did you get into this room anyway? You know, they would be really upset, right? Because they're engaged in sense gratification, right? Such a person would be called a party pooper. It's a phrase in English. Someone who ruins the party where there's wine and there's talk of nonsense and how to make more money and how to go on vacations and whether they should get this cell phone or that phone, or they should buy this car or this stock or that stock. The person says, hey, let's have a Bhagavad Gita class. They say, what, are you crazy? We're having fun. Yeah. Fun is self-mutilation. That's what they consider fun. They mutilate their ability to be Krishna conscious. And to do that, they need some wine or liquor. They need maybe some marijuana or cocaine. And they want to end the evening with illicit sex, this and that. And this is going on everywhere all the time. And therefore, we're surrounded by this. Therefore, we have to have an oasis. The temple is an oasis where one can graduate from sense gratification to transcendental bliss in the company of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Radha and Krishna and his pure devotees, like Prabhupada and the Acharyas. So that's the difference. Transcendental bliss is always in the company of Krishna. And sense gratification must eliminate Krishna in order to engage in it. That's why there are locked doors and there's curtains and there's lights out and this and that, so that people can have uninterrupted sense gratification without having any sense of guilt. So this is another one of the major themes in becoming a sense gratifier. You have to deny any sense of guilt for engaging in sense gratification. Therefore, there are whole books of philosophy and psychology trying to free people from a sense of guilt. And this is the whole modern thrust. There's nothing wrong with eating meat. You have to eat meat in order to have protein. And you need protein to have enhanced intelligence. And then you can get a job in Microsoft or Amazon or this thing or that thing. You need that protein. So what is going on in places like the United States and other big meat-eating countries? They have protein intoxication, which leads to being agitated for sense gratification. Okay? And in order to digest all that protein, they have to have some liquor to get heat in their stomach to digest or try and digest. You can't really digest meat. It's never completely digested. That's why people have bad smells from their mouth and from their anus, because they're not digesting properly, because they're eating things that are undigestible, such as fried foods and meat and eggs and everything that rots in the intestines. The length of the intestines of a human being is like 25 to 28, sometimes even 30 feet long. If you take your intestines out and stretch them out straight, it goes at least 25 feet. That means all that meat and all the mixed things with it, the condiments and this thing and that thing, it's got to go through that 25 feet of intestine. And your body throws all kinds of acids in order to digest or try to digest the meat. And because we only have 2 canine teeth, we don't chew it properly either. And therefore, it just putrefies, and then it causes all these bad smells. You basically have a sewer in your intestinal tract. It's a sewer. Just like you open a sewer, you have this bad smell. You open the intestines of a person who's a meat eater, it's a sewer. Even if you're not a meat eater, it's still a type of sewer. So therefore, it's said in the scriptures that the stool of pure devotees smells like nectar, like roses. If you read about Rishabhadev, you'll read that. But the stool of meat eaters and people who eat indiscriminately, it's a sewer. So, the devotee's experience of transcendental bliss is completely different than the karmi's experience of sense gratification. And ultimately, people, even though they're programmed intellectually not to feel guilty about sense gratification, they feel guilty. And it causes mental disturbance. So therefore it says, the pure devotee thinks himself fallen in the ocean of birth and death and incessantly prays to the Lord to lift him up. Yeah, look, if you were drowning in the ocean, you would pray that someone would come with a dinghy or some kind of a boat and pull you up. You know, just like, let's say you're drowning and someone comes up in a speedboat and says, hey, this is your lucky day. There's 2 free tickets to the next basketball game in Seattle. And you say, I don't want that. You say, okay, well, here's a free Amazon gift card for you. And if you take one, I'll give you 2. You say, no, I don't want that. Okay, well, look, here's a free car wash ticket at Brown Bear. You say, well, I don't want that. So, well, what do you want? He said, just get me out of this water. Lift me up into the boat. He said, no, I can't do that, but I can give you all these things. You see? So when you're drowning, it's very clear what you want, you know. He can offer you anything else you want. You won't take it. You just want to be lifted out of the water. So this is the position of the devotee. The pure devotee thinks himself fallen in the ocean of birth and death and incessantly prays to the Lord to lift him up. See? So let's say you're in an airplane and you're going over the Pacific and the airplane starts to go down. There's engine trouble, this thing, that thing, or one engine's on fire, and the pilot says, if you know a prayer, you better say it now because we're going down. And someone next to you says, hey, you know, I can give you the best stock to buy. You say, are you crazy? I don't want to hear about stocks right now. I want to pray to God to make this plane go up again. You see. So in those dire situations, you see clearly what you want. But when everything's going all right, and there's money in the bank, and there's going to be a party, and there'll be wine, and there'll be talk of stocks, and this thing, and cars, and cell phones, and this thing, and that thing, and vacations, TK, you see. There's no more Krishna involved, because that would interfere with the fun that people are having by speculating, talking about politics, Biden this, Trump that, all nonsense. Right? But when there's a tsunami coming at you, 500 feet high, 1,000 miles an hour, with 500 feet high means there's about 10,000 tons of water coming at you, you know. Then you forget about TK. All of a sudden you say, please God, save me. You see? But the devotee, all the time he's thinking, he only aspires to be a speck of transcendental dust at the lotus feet of the Lord. The pure devotee, by the grace of the Lord, absolutely loses all attraction for material enjoyment. And to keep free from contamination, he always thinks of the lotus feet of the Lord. King Kalushakara, a great devotee of the Lord, prayed. You see, this is reality. This is the real truth, right? Well, who wants to hear it? Obviously, not many people, right? Even our own devotees. Not many people want to hear this. They want TK. Everything is all right. Nothing is all right. Nothing is all right. The educational system stinks. The economy stinks. The relationships stink. Nothing is all right. But yet, TK. So that's what's called a pipe dream. It's a dream about something that is not possible. So, this prayer by King Kalushakara is transcendental, my Lord Krishna, I pray. See, King Kalushkar is an Alvar. It's not. He's not a member of the Gaudiya Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava. No, he's an Alvar, but he's saying, my dear Krishna, Krishna Twadiya, right? Padapankaja Panjararantam. In other words, my dear Lord Krishna, I pray that the swan of my mind may immediately sink down to the stems of the lotus feet of your lordship. So these are called metaphors. He's not saying, I pray that like the swan of my mind, that would be a simile, but he says, the swan of my mind. In other words, he's comparing his mind to a swan, but he's not saying like the swan. He's saying the swan of my mind. That's a metaphor as opposed to a simile. A simile would have like, but a metaphor, it states something that is equal to something else directly. It doesn't use the word like. Right? So he says, the swan of my mind may immediately sink down to the stems of the lotus feet of your lordship. So he's comparing the lotus feet of the Lord to stems of a lotus flower. And be locked in their network. Otherwise, at the time of my final... So when he says locked in their network, it means he's praying that his mind be always focused on the lotus feet of Krishna. That's exactly what was said before by Prabhupada, where he says, the pure devotee thinks of himself falling in the ocean, and incessantly prays to the Lord to lift him up. He only aspires to become a speck of transcendental dust at the lotus feet of the Lord. Well, that's the Gaudiya Vaishnava way of saying it. But the same thing is said by Kulashikar Maharaj. He says, I want, and it's very poetic, very, very, both are poetic, but Kulashikar Maharaj is surprisingly poetic, where he says that I want the swan of my mind to sink down to the stems of the lotus feet of your lordship. Just like the lotus flower has stems growing down in the water, right? So the swan has to stick his head down past the lotus flower, which is on the surface of the water, to the stems, which are part of the root of the flower that grows in water, right? So in the same way, the devotee wants to sink down his head to the lotus feet of the Lord. Or, as it says above, the devotee aspires to become a speck of transcendental dust at the lotus feet of the Lord. This proves that there's no difference between the real followers of Sri Vaishnavism and devotees who are worshipping Krishna as the Supreme Personality of God. There's no difference. The original Alvars were all devotees of Krishna. They also respected Narayana, but they didn't say that Narayana is the origin of Krishna. That's what the modern Sri Vaishnavas say. And he says, otherwise, at the time of my final breath, when my throat is choked up with cough, how will it be possible to think of you? So that's one major point. Then, and the same thing is said in the Bhagavad Gita in different ways. Okay, so then also it says there is an intimate relationship between a swan and a lotus stem. So the comparison is very appropriate. Without becoming a swan or Paramahansa, one cannot enter into the network of the lotus feet of the Lord. So why does it compare the swan to a Paramahansa? Because the Paramahansa can see Krishna everywhere, and the swan can drink milk dissolved in water. In other words, separate the milk from the water. And the devotee can separate the body from the soul. Right? See the difference. So that's the vision of the Paramahansa. He sees the soul and the supersoul in the heart of every living entity. And the swan can drink milk even though it's dissolved in water. Right? Otherwise, at the time of my final breath, when my throat is choked up with cough, how would it be possible to think of you? So we have to be locked in the network of the stems of the lotus, or in other words, locked. Our mind should be locked on the lotus feet of the Lord. So that's the statement in the Rig Veda, where it says that the demigods are always seeking the lotus feet of the Lord, because there is mercy there. There's no mercy in the Coca-Cola machine. You can put your money in. If the machine's not functioning properly, you don't get the Coca-Cola. You can bang on the machine, call up the Coke company, but this machine does not have any mercy. It's not going to give you the Coke because it's malfunctioning. So anyone who's not a devotee has a malfunctioning brain, and they're not going to be able to give you mercy. They'll say, oh yeah, my mercy is, here's a free sample of marijuana. My mercy is, here's a bottle of Chardonnay wine. Or here's a tip on how to buy, on which stock to buy Monday. That's their mercy. There's no mercy there. Only devotee is an ocean of mercy, just like said Prabhupada, the spiritual master is characterized as an ocean of mercy, because he's always giving Krishna. So then it says, as stated in Brahma Samhita, the mental speculators, even by dint of learned scholarship, cannot even dream of the absolute truth by speculating over it for eternity. So this is stated in Brahma Samhita 5:33, where it says, Vedesa Durlabham. Vedesa Durlabham means through the Vedas, Krishna is inaccessible. The Vedas cannot give you Krishna. They can point to Krishna, but they cannot give you a direct experience of Krishna. And this is explained in Brahma Samhita by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who says, Brahma says that the transcendental absolute is beyond the reach of the Vedas, which originate in sound, which originates in the mundane ether. So sound expands space, and it's perceivable in ether or space. See? So therefore it's a material thing. So it cannot actually give you experience, transcendental experience of Krishna, unless you have knowledge of Krishna by hearing from bona fide authorities. Then, and therefore Prabhupada says here, he says, so the Vedas cannot present before us a direct view of the transcendental world, Goloka. It is only when the Vedas are imbued with the chit potency, that is, chit means sat chit ananda vigraha, so eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Right? So chit is knowledge with realization, and then one becomes blissful. Then one is able, as it says here, but when the Vedas are imbued with the chit potency, that they are enabled to deal with the transcendental. But Goloka reveals itself to every jiva soul when he is under the influence of the spiritual cognitive potency joined to the essence of ecstatic energy. So Sat, Chit, Ananda is eternity, but there's knowledge and then there's bliss. So when the knowledge and bliss join together through devotional service, that's when you actually begin to see Goloka and see spiritual reality. It's not simply by reading the book. there has to be devotional service based on knowledge of Krishna as the supreme absolute truth. The ecstatic function of devotion is boundless and is surcharged with unalloyed transcendental knowledge. You see that bliss and that knowledge are boundless together. It's surcharged. That knowledge reveals Goloka Tattva, the principle of the highest transcendental, in unison with devotion, without asserting itself separately, but as a subsidiary to unalloyed devotion. So the sense gratification exhibits itself separately from Krishna. This is the main point. Okay, well, there's more points, but we'll stop there because I have to go somewhere at 7:30 today. Are there any questions? There are many more points. In fact, we'll go over some of the other points tomorrow. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantharaj ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.